similitude of what the United Nations did would be to go to northern Nigeria and say that, yes, you have accepted Islam. This land has become a land of Islam. But as for the rest of you who have not accepted Islam, we are breaking this north into two. We are creating a new country for you. That is exactly what the United Nations did. No one chased these people out, but when Islam came, Islam conquered the land. It was obvious that they were now a minority, right? And because it's not in their nature to accept anything different from theirs on their own, the time from which they started to leave the place was when they killed Nabi Isa, according to them, when they killed him. It was a particular tribe amongst them that killed him, right? And out of fear that people were going to exact revenge on them, right? Bearing in mind, Jesus was from that land. He wasn't a stranger. His parents were from Nazareth, right? They started to leave. They started to leave. They started to leave. And then when Islam came and Islam conquered the land, many more of them left. Whereas at the time that the land was land of Judaism, the minorities remained and they were worshiping in their own way. At the time that it was becoming land of Christianity, before they did what they did, the minorities remained and they were doing their own thing. But they refused to accept to be minority. So it would be to carve the north into two and create a new Muslim. Or when Christianity came to the south, right? You find places like the south, southeast, where people overwhelmingly embraced Christianity. But then you find the southwest, where people, some Christianity, some Islam. It will be for the United Nations to come to southern Nigeria and say that, okay, Christianity has dominated here, but some from amongst you in the south, and southeast who have not accepted Christianity, we are cutting this country into two and we are creating a new country. That was exactly what the United Nations did in 1948, and that is why that land has never known peace and is not likely ever to know peace. And as I am talking to you this morning, there are Muslims in that country called Israel who are practicing Muslims and who do not have any other country or town or city on the surface of the earth. What I was trying to explain is how there are Muslims who are citizens of Israel. You remember the whole country was Palestine. For a long time, it was under the British protectorate, this place called Palestine. It was only ever known as Palestine or Philistine in Arabic, right? When Britain handed it over to the landowners that look after yourselves, it was handed over as Palestine. The only name that exists in all the documents signed was Palestine, right? So this was Palestine, a land of Islam, but with Christians free to live and practice, with Jews free to live and practice. But then when the United Nations came and they were dividing that land, right? Now, I don't know the names of, let me use Lagos, which is familiar with me, right? You know, let us assume that Ikeja, Agege, Mushin, Ikeja, Agege was, or Lagos mainland was where they carved out and they say this is Israel from today. But there were Muslim indigenes of those areas whose entire existence was in that place, who did not know any other place. So even though the place was now carved out and is now Israel, but they remained because that's the only place they know. That is where they were born. And that is why till today there are Muslims who are indigenes, who are citizens of Israel, and they practice their Islam in Israel. There are Christians from the time of Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, who are citizens, who are indigenous of Israel, right? And they remain as Christians and they practice their Christianity there, right? So they are minority worshippers, but they remain in that place, right? You know, when the Christians go to Israel for pilgrimage, for tourism, I heard this from Sheikh Imran Eleha, right? He said the people that show them around are mainly Muslims, but they wouldn't necessarily know, right? Because they are citizens and indigenous of this place. They were born there, they've grown up, so they know all the historical sites, be it Christianity or whatever. So when they go on this pilgrimage or tourism, that all the people that are explaining things to them, they are Muslim indigenous and citizens of Israel, right? And the reason the job is attractive to the Muslims is it's a low-paid job, right? The Israelis, it's like those of you who are familiar with Dubai. You will never see a citizen of Dubai doing a low-paid job. It's not possible. Same in Saudi Arabia. Anybody you see doing low-paid job is a foreigner, somebody who has come from somewhere, right? So he said that all the people who show them around, all the historical sites, including where Jesus was born, and we will explain everything to them. Said they are Muslims, but the Christians do not know that these people are Muslims, right? And as for the Christian support, right, for Israel, because the Christians, generally speaking, they support Israel, right? And it is even possible there are Christians amongst us as we are seated. But these are historical facts which nobody can deny, right? The Jews did not believe that Mary gave birth to Jesus in an immaculate way, i.e., that no man touched her. Do not believe that that happened, right? And if you remove that from Christianity, it's all over. There's nothing more, right? The Jews believe Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wasalam to be a bastard. The Jews believe him to be the son of Joseph the carpenter, right? They believe him to be to be an illegitimate son of, whereas in the Quran, very explicitly, the Quran says it clearly that no man touched her. We sent our prophet Jibril, right, to breathe into her and then announce to her that you are going to have this child and all. And the Quran even admonishes her through Jibril to leave the town, because people were going to wonder, how did she get pregnant? Somebody who was not married. The Jews do not believe in all this, right? The Jews will not step into a church, even if it meant having their lives saved inside that church, right? But they would enter into a mosque because they regard Christianity as idolatry worship, but they see Islam as being upon Tawhid, which they believe that they are as well. So this raises a question. Why then are the Christians so keen to support Israel, who regards your Lord, the one through whom you cannot gain the Father, who regard him as an illegitimate child, who regard his mother as a prostitute, and who regard your religion as idolatry worship? No Christian can provide an answer to this. But Allah, today, America Britain, they are the mainstay, the power behind Israel, right? But the Israelis in America, they do not believe in Christianity. And Christianity is the official religion of America. So why haven't they created a nation of Judaism for them in America? Why haven't they done that? And by the way, when they were to create that nation called Israel, Israel was not the first choice where they are now. They considered many nations. Ethiopia was one of them. Uganda was one of them. That should it be here? Should it be here? And then they settled for Palestine as being their original home. That is how the nation of Palestine came to be. So the injustice of splitting a nation into two is the sole cause of this crisis which we are witnessing. And while that injustice remains, there will never be peace of that land. People, 4 things I said we want to address. That is this end of number 2. The number 1, for those who came late, why is it of interest to us as Muslims? The number 2, which you met us on, was who actually owns the land between the Muslim and Christians. So it was during the time of Umar, radiallahu anh, that land was won definitively for the Muslims. The people embraced Islam as they did with the Messenger of Allah. The sanctuary became Masjid al-Aqsa, and then Islam became the majority religion in that place. We move to the third of 4 issues, and that is, where are the Muslims? Because how is it that a tiny nation, Alimashaw local government, is bigger than the whole of Israel? That one local government is bigger than Israel. So why is it that one nation is able to hold the entire Muslim world and the entire Arab land to ransom, and all we are reduced to is to beg for the border to be open so we can take aids to the people of Gaza? That is the best that the Muslim is able to do. How? Of course, it was American power that made this to be possible, but in that is a major lesson for us as Muslims, because anyone who is going to talk and be listened to in the modern age has to have military power, right? See, North Korea is a tiny place, but their own number 1 project forever is their military development. And that is why that tiny place called North Korea can say to America, go to pieces or wherever. And America respects them because they have developed themselves militarily, right? With the money that Saudi Arabia has, Saudi should be one of the most militarily sophisticated nations on earth today, because they have the money, and it is money that is used to buy this thing. But then, when Saudi felt threatened by Iran, what did they do? They call America, come and protect us. And America is there till the end of time. And America makes sure that they do not develop militarily, right? So that America remains there. Why does, look at Iran, right? America would have wiped Iran off if America could do it. Because Iran is the most hated Muslim land on the surface of the earth to America, right? But Iran has armed itself to the teeth now. Iran has armed itself, right? So America respects Iran in its own way for no other reason than its military capabilities. America respects North Korea for no other reason. America respects Russia for no other reason. But we Muslims, the Muslim nation, we got that one terribly wrong. We got it terribly wrong. Of course, another thing which did not work in our advantage is population, right? You cannot have a strong military without having a big population. Look at the UAE with all their money. They can never have a strong military because they are so tiny, right? Israel is tinier, but America is the power of Israel, and America will not let all these nations grow their military. So the third question is, where are the Muslim nations, right? Now, why is this important? Because in the view of some of our scholars, right, the Palestinian issue will never be won until it becomes an Islamic cause, or it becomes a Muslim cause, right? Especially our Salafi scholars, and I don't use Salafi negatively here at all. I don't regard Salafi as a negative term, right? But the best way I can describe those I am referring to is by bringing in that word, right? Because a section of them believe that the Palestinians are fighting it as a tribal war between the Arabs and Israel, and Islam forbids a war based on tribe, right? So they are of the view that it should become an Islamic war rather than tribal war. Okay, I agree with that, but then where are the Muslims, right? Okay, now, as I speak with you today, right, Egypt, remember the war of the 1960s. It was primarily between Israel and Egypt, right? Now, as I speak with you, since 1979, Egypt has signed a pact with Israel, recognizing the right of Israel to exist as a nation, and saying to Israel, we will not fight you, and you will not fight us. That's a Muslim land, right? Jordan, that was 1979. Jordan followed in 1994. Again, officially recognizing the state of Israel and agreeing with Israel, you won't fight us and we won't fight you, right? Having not recognized it originally since 1948, right? More lately, just 3 years ago, in 2020, the UAE officially recognized Israel as a country with a right to exist, having not recognized it since 1948. And again, the UAE says, we won't fight you, you won't fight us. And 1 month after the UAE, Bahrain followed. Bahrain wouldn't fight Israel, Israel wouldn't fight Bahrain. And in December of the same 2020, Morocco announced that it was establishing full diplomatic ties with Israel, having not recognized Israel since 1948. And then Sudan followed. Sudan announced that it was going to recognize Israel, and then the people rebelled, the people of Sudan. And when the government saw how the people reacted, then the government just kept quiet. So officially, Sudan has not recognized Israel. And then the icing on the cake, Saudi Arabia. President Biden was bent, and that was his #1 foreign mission, to get Saudi Arabia to officially recognize the state of Israel and to sign a pact that we will not fight you and you will not fight us. And the talks had reached advanced stages, right? And President Biden was determined to make this happen before the next American election in 2024, because it is a major Israeli issue, it's a major election issue for America, right? But then, وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. So, America was plotting, Israel was plotting, Saudi was plotting. They were getting closer and closer, to signing this pact, and then this happened, right? Now this has thrown everything in the bin. Now, because how can any Muslim nation now come forward to say we want to establish full diplomatic ties with Israel with what is happening now? This crisis is what has made. Otherwise, before next year, Saudi would have recognized Israel. So Palestine gets isolated and isolated and isolated and isolated and more isolated by the Muslims. So who are the Muslims? When they say this thing must be fought as an Islamic war, all the Muslim nations are recognizing Israel. Where then are those Muslims now who are going to fight it as an Islamic war? Now, by Allah, am I necessarily blaming these nations? Not so, because international relations has its own dynamism, right? I've mentioned that they've done this, but I'm not necessarily blaming them, because in international relations, interest is what comes. In fact, interest is number one, interest is number 100, right? Everything is about what is in our interest, right? As I said, when Saudi felt threatened, Iran nearly took over the Haram in 1 year gone past, like this, 1978. Iran nearly took over the Haram, right? It was a very close call, like this. And then Saudi thought, who is that power that could get rid of these people? And they couldn't think beyond America. And since then, America has had a permanent presence in that place, right? Okay, so would you blame Saudi Arabia? Should they fold their arms and then let... I'm not justifying, I'm just defining that interest, that when it happens, right, your interest first. Who can protect us from Iran? America. Oh yeah, America come. That is where. And then the Muslim nations are always fighting themselves too, just as recently as last year or the year before. Saudi was bombing Yemen, and because Yemen is Shia, supported by Iran, which is Shia, right? And Saudi will never be, right? It's interesting, isn't it? Saudi will never be an ally of a Muslim nation which is Shia, but they will be in agreement with Israel. How do you explain that? Right? But that is what happens in international relations. So everybody has interest to protect. Unfortunately, Iran, the Muslim nation that Israel worries about the most, is so far from Israel. If you look at the map, you will see Iraq and you see other nations, meaning that if Iran were to fight Israel, Iran will have to fight over Iraq. Iraq will never, till the end of time, allow Iran to fly over it. Meanwhile, their Muslim brothers and sisters are being killed on a daily basis. This is what happens. But then it is also a confirmation of the words of Allah, that Allah says, وَلَا تَنَوْزَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَدْعَ بَرِيحُكُمْ. Say, do not dispute amongst yourselves, Muslims. When you do, you lose your strength, and then the courage that you need to fight common enemies will desert you. And then when Allah says we should not go to kuffar for help, but try to find it amongst ourselves, the day we went to the kuffar was the day we lost everything. Finally, brothers and sisters, what is your role and what is my role? Part of our roles is that which we have done today, right? To educate ourselves. Because as I said at the beginning, 9 in 10 of Muslims as a minimum do not understand what is going on in that place. We just know there is a fight and they are killing our people, but we really do not understand what is going on in that place. Part of our roles is to educate the people. Part of our roles is to support Palestine. And you would have noticed how Israel keeps making reference to Hamas, 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 Hamas. That is strategic. It is not Hamas they are killing. It is the people of Palestine that they are killing. Your brothers and sisters, Muslims in Palestine. Those are the people that they are killing. But they have avoided using that word Palestine even once because they want to be able to justify that the people we are killing are the soldiers of Hamas. Hamas being a terrorist group, as they have defined it. But all of us that are seated, most of us that are seated, we would remember the days when the African National Congress in South Africa was officially a terrorist group. The same ANC exists till today. Is ANC a terrorist group? It was a freedom fighting association of South Africans who wanted their land back from the white man, right? We were in the UK when the IRA was officially a terrorist group, and the leader of the IRA then, Jerry Adams, his voice was not to be broadcast on British radio or television. That was the law. If he spoke anywhere, somebody else must speak that something on the radio or television. The radio must never cover his voice. We met that in England, right? The same Jerry Adams ended up as a member of parliament in England. Nelson Mandela was the chief terrorist of the ANC. When Mandela came out of prison, was there any country in the world in which he wasn't celebrated? So anytime they mention Hamas as a terrorist organization, think ANC in South Africa. Hamas is a terrorist organization only to the extent that the ANC in South Africa was a terrorist organization. So they keep saying Israeli-Hamas war. No, it is Israeli-Palestinian war. The people, if it is only the people, Hamas is only based in Gaza, right? But then, is that the only place they are killing people? They are killing people all over the place. West Bank, right? And who created Hamas? Israel created Hamas. For those of you my age here, right? The original enemy was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. Who was the leader? God bless you. Yasser Arafat. So at the time they were facing Yasser Arafat, they were clandestinely raising a rival military group from within the same Palestine. They were channeling money. That was what became Hamas of today. Just like America created, is it Al-Qaeda or whatever, Taliban, in those places, Israel created Hamas that is fighting them today. So your role and my role is to educate ourselves, those who may not know, to support the Palestine with whatever we may do, and to support them with dua as well, that Allah should grant victory to all the oppressed people in the world. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الأخيار وسلم تسليما كثيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.